My husband, Brian, has always looked down on me and has thrown all the housework and childcare behind me. He returned from his job assignment away from his family, and he left his phone on the sofa and went to take a shower. As the phone rang, I glanced at Brian's phone and saw a message from a woman.
I know the passcode.
My heart skipped a beat as I read the message on Nora's open screen.
Let's go on a date next month. It's our 10th wedding anniversary.
Looking at the phone screen together, Connor spoke with a bitter expression.
I sue him cheating.
What?
On the last day of the school trip, I spotted them.
On the image displayed on Connor's phone, Brian was seen kiddling with a young woman and entering a hotel. A sense of emptiness washed over me. It seems like I've been cheated on for 10 years. I find Nora and Connor looking at me with concern as I sob. Soon, Nora and Connor express their anger openly.
We'll show him hell and make him regret it.
I won't forgive him even if he begs.
And then my children's attack on my husband began. I'm Julia, a 50-year-old housewife. I've been married to Brian for 14 years this year. I met Brian through a marriage introduction agency. I was attracted not only to his stable income from working in a large company, but also to his refreshing demeanor and bright smile. After our marriage, I quit my full-time job because Brian wished I could be home when he returned. However, things changed drastically after we got married. Brian started looking down on others and would casually make hurtful remarks with a smile. While we were dating, Brian would gaze affectionately at babies in strollers and talk to me with passion.
2 kids would be nice, don't you think? 1 boy and 1 girl. That's the ideal.
Yeah, it sounds lively and fun. However, despite having such a conversation, Brian dumped the baby care on me just 1 month after giving birth. I just returned from hospital, so I'm still not feeling well. If you're not good at housework, at least help with Connor's care. I desperately conveyed this, but he brushed me off with a bored expression.
What are you whining about? Taking care of the baby is a mother's job, right? Besides, you're a stay-at-home mom with no job, so you should be fine even if you don't sleep.
There's no way I'm fine. I feel so dizzy, and it's tough every day.
Even so, you expect me to help while I'm working? That's ridiculous.
Brian snaps.
I'm earning the salary to support you guys. You're supposed to take perfect care of Connor and handle the housework. It's only natural for both of us to fulfill our roles. What's the problem?
Of course, I'm grateful that you're earning the salary. I really appreciate it. But, Brian, you're Connor's father, right? Can't you at least take over things like giving him a bath or changing diapers, even just on weekends? As I tearfully pleaded, Brian glanced at sleeping Connor in the crib and uttered a surprising remark.
I can't stand it, you know?
What did you say?
Well, babies, they're smelly and dirty, right? I'm a clean freak, so I really hate getting dirty. But I can at least hold him.
I was dumbfounded, and he delivered another blow.
Also, Julia, you look kind of grungy lately, don't you?
What? He said with a somewhat exasperated expression as he frowned at me.
After giving birth, Your figure got messed up, and you stopped dressing nicely. You're running around with your hair all disheveled, taking care of Connor. You don't look like a woman anymore.
That's unavoidable, isn't it? I couldn't help but yell. Brian, you have no idea how tough it is for me every day. Feeding milk every 2 hours, rushing whenever I hear crying. I'm always putting myself second. That's the kind of life I'm living.
That's just an excuse, isn't it? Actresses and all, they give birth and go back to work right away with their figures intact. They look gorgeous. It's just your lack of effort.
Mocked in such a way, I was speechless. And then, some time later, when I expressed anxiety about Connor not eating his baby food, Brian bluntly dismissed it.
It's because your cooking sucks.
What?
I have to put up with it every day. Babies are honest, you know.
Laughing loudly, I felt like crying. While dumping all the housework and childcare on me, Brian constantly criticized me. Again and again, Brian would compare me to other women and criticize.
The lady next door always looks beautiful, doesn't she? It's hard to believe she has a high school-aged son. She always has her long hair nicely done.
Brian, enchanted, I retorted with a scowl. I also want to go to the hair salon for the first time in 6 months. Can you watch Connor? Then Brian raised his voice.
No way! Why me?
Just for half a day, please.
Hey, you make time for things that matter to you.
Brian said mockingly.
Unlike you, I only have weekends off. You're not planning on taking those away, are you? Or making me work at home?
I retorted, not backing down. Brian, you spend weekends going out or playing games at home, enjoying your time off, but I don't get any break, not even for a second.
Well, that's what being a mother is all about.
You're a father too, you know, and $30 a month for allowance is just too little. I can't even afford decent skincare products. Brian slammed his cup on the table.
You're lucky to get any allowance at all, being unemployed. Don't talk back to me because I'm supporting you. That's why I've decided to manage the household finances.
In our house, Brian is in charge of the money, not me as a housewife. I agreed without much thought when we got married, but soon regretted it. Because Brian absolutely refuses to show me his pay stubs.
I give you the household expenses properly. What's wrong with using my salary however I want?
Whenever I ask to see the bank account or his pay stubs, he always gets annoyed, so I eventually gave up pushing it. Even when Brian is at home on his days off, he only plays with Connor a little and doesn't care about his son. So, it's hard to say that Connor has a strong attachment to Brian, but I couldn't bring myself to take away his father. As a full-time homemaker, I had already considered the risk of divorce with a young child. The year Connor entered elementary school, I became pregnant with our second child. Though my affection for Brian had cooled, I couldn't abandon the dream of having 2 children. After experiencing a miscarriage once before, I felt overjoyed at the arrival of this baby. Brian also wanted a daughter, so there was a faint hope that if a girl was born, he would show some affection. I had the faint hope. However, unfortunately, just before the summer vacation of elementary school, Brian received a transfer order to a rural area.
What will you do? Will you come with me?
I shook my head. Connor has just settled into elementary school, and I have mommy friends here, so I want to raise the children here. Besides, I feel more at ease having my pregnancy progress monitored at the hospital where I was looked after during the miscarriage. Then Brian said kind words to me.
Sure, you're right. It's not just your body.
Brian, it's your first time living alone, right? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just clean up as needed and buy frozen meal and deli food from the supermarket.
With Brian's easy acceptance, I breathed a sigh of relief. Eventually, our long-awaited daughter was born. Connor seemed to adore his 7 years younger sister endlessly. He would forgive her with a smile, whether she scribbled on his homework notebook or broke his favorite toys. Nora also adored her gentle big brother. She would follow Connor around the house and mimic whatever he did. Even though she couldn't read, she would peek into Connor's children's books and disrupt his reading. She would cling to Connor's legs while he was preparing dinner and whine for attention. Even in such moments, Connor would patiently read children's books to Nora in simple sentences without getting angry, and they would do chores together that Nora could manage, like picking beans, trying to spend time together amicably. Being a single parent was tougher than I had imagined, but thanks to Connor willingly looking after Nora, we managed to get through somehow. Eventually, when Nora turned 4, she started attending nursery, and I resumed part-time work. A few years later, Brian returned from his job assignment, but within 6 months, he was assigned to another location. This time, he was to be deployed as the director of a newly established business. While that was good, but his presence as a father was still weak as ever. Despite being the long-awaited daughter, he would bring snacks or toys every time he returned, take photos together, but it was only until Nora began asserting herself. As Nora started to assert herself and became more attached to Connor, Brian began to show discomfort and started complaining.
Why are you asking Connor to read even though I bought picture books for you? Come to me.
She just loves her big brother, can't help it. Brian clicked his tongue and directed his anger towards me.
Isn't Julia's discipline to blame? I bet after I leave, you're filling the kids' heads with bad things about me.
At that moment, Nora, who overheard the conversation from the hallway, rushed into the living room and intervened.
No, that's not it, Dad. Even when you come back, you only play games and don't play with Nora, right? But Big Brother plays with me at the park and listens to my nursery school stories. That's why I like Connor better.
I was amazed at Nora's innocent tone expressing her opinion. As expected of a girl, she's still in nursery school but acts so grown up. Beside me, Brian, whose fatherly dignity had been wounded, retorted with a flushed face.
Oh. Is that so? I hate bratty kids like you too.
Hey, don't talk to your kids like that.
Julia, it's because of your bad discipline. It's outrageous for kids to oppose their father.
Brian, glaring at Nora and me, packed his bags and returned to his new assignment location. With his consistently arrogant remarks, It was no wonder Brian wasn't well liked by the kids. It was his own doing. Even if the kids didn't say it out loud, I could tell from their distancing toward Brian. The moment Brian returned home, he would sprawl on the couch, playing games on his phone or laughing at videos. Both Connor and Nora would emerge from their rooms upon his arrival. But when they approached, Brian would brush them off with comments like "shut up" or "I'm busy, go away," so they've stopped engaging with him lately. I couldn't understand why he bothered coming home every month when he had no intention of spending time with the family. However, the reason became clear at a neighborhood gathering recently, and I was dumbfounded.
Julia's husband is on assignment in Washington, right?
Coming home every month to see the kids, that's admirable.
Connor and Nora must be thrilled. What a great dad.
Well, yeah. I returned a vague smile. I endure being the talk of the neighborhood, but I wonder what the residents would look like if I were to lay bare the truth.
School events don't matter to fathers. Nora's piano recital. Connor participating in a debate competition. You should handle those. Don't waste my precious paid time off on such things.
He's a father, yet he spouts such lines. The children have grown up to be good kids, taking Brian as a negative example. Nora, attending the local elementary school, serves as a class representative, while Connor has entered one of the top high schools in the state. Inheriting Brian's intelligence, he's currently enrolled in the advanced class. He's a kind child who doesn't flaunt his intelligence like Brian or look down on others, but rather, he's considerate of his family. Nora, lively and assertive, also serves as a class representative and has many friends. It's surprising how different their personalities are, considering they are siblings. As autumn approaches, I purchased a black Boston bag and a large backpack. Connor will use them on his school trip.
Dad also lives near airport, right? We might run into each other somewhere.
Even if he doesn't particularly like Brian, it seems he enjoys running into his dad by chance. Connor left in high spirits, but when he returned 4 days later, he seemed oddly subdued. He gave vague responses whenever Nora asked about the trip. And after dinner, he hesitated to speak when he approached me washing dishes, eventually giving up altogether.
What's wrong, Connor?
Oh, it's nothing, just tired, so I'm going to bed.
All right then, good night.
Good night.
He slouched his shoulders, wearily climbed the stairs, and quietly closed his bedroom door. He remained withdrawn for a while after that. As the end of the month approached and Brian was due back, Connor remained holed up in his room, appearing more sullen than usual. It was unusual for the usually mild-mannered Connor to act this way. During dinner, I suddenly suggested to Brian, "Taking the plane back home must be tough. How about I go to Washington for a change? I can cook meals and tidy up your room for you." Upon hearing this, Brian's expression changed. For some reason, he hastily refused.
No, it's fine. You're busy too, right? Don't worry about me.
Is that so? I felt a sense of unease.
A wife should take care of her husband.
How could someone who's so insistent about that say something like this? After dinner, while Brian was taking a shower, his phone rang. A message appeared on the phone he carelessly left on the sofa. I casually glanced at it and held my breath. It was a message from a woman.
Brian, you're probably spending time with your family now, aren't you? I miss you.
From the content, she seemed to be his suspected mistress. Her name was apparently Emily. Nora, who sighed just like me, picked up the phone.
I know the passcode.
Hey, don't do that. It's not right to snoop around in someone else's phone. When I scolded him, Nora smirked.
It's okay. Dad takes a long shower.
That's not it.
That reaction definitely means he's cheating.
As Nora punched in the passcode on her phone, Connor came downstairs. We all looked at the message app screen together. When the conversation appeared, Connor's face darkened, and he let out a deep sigh.
I knew it.
Nora, about to exclaim, quickly covered her mouth with her hand.
Let's have a date next month. It's our 10th wedding anniversary. We'll have a fancy dinner, stay at a hotel with a view of the city lights, and spend a relaxing morning in my room. I'll wear the high-end dress you bought for me the other day.
Dad really was cheating.
Nora was visibly shocked. Then Connor, with a bitter expression, muttered under his breath.
I saw my dad cheating.
What?
On the last day of the school trip, I saw him.
Connor said, enlarging the image on his phone with his fingertips. I felt like collapsing to my knees. It was a photo of Brian, arm in arm with a young woman, entering a hotel. It was clear evidence of his affair.
On the last day of the school trip, it was free time. While we were walking around the city in groups, I saw a couple going into a hotel from afar.
Connor explained with a somber expression.
It's impressive that even Dad noticed.
Since they were about as far apart in age as parent and child, it caught my eye.
Seeing me speechless, Connor looked apologetic.
Sorry, I intended to tell Mom as soon as I got back, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
No, it's okay. You must have been troubled by it. Thinking about Connor, who had been troubled alone, I felt an inexplicable anger towards Brian. Simultaneously, I was overwhelmed by a sense of emptiness, as if a hole had opened up in my chest. With a dry smile, I let out a bitter chuckle. It seems like I've been cheated on for 10 years. All I can do is laugh now.
10 years?
The message says congratulations on our 10th wedding anniversary.
Nora's eyes widened significantly at Connor's explanation.
10 years. That's when I was in your belly. And it's been going on since then.
That's unbelievable, seriously. I attempted to say something light-hearted as I sat down on a chair, but I failed miserably. A surge of emotions rose to my throat, and tears streamed down uncontrollably. Nora and Connor looked at me with concern as I sobbed. It felt embarrassing to cry in front of my children. I fought that way, yet I couldn't contain my emotions. I had convinced myself that Brian's unusual kindness during Nora's pregnancy was because of the miscarriage I had before her. But that wasn't the case. He just wanted to alleviate his guilt from cheating. with tears streaming down my face as I sniffled and wiped them away with the back of my hand. Nora asked Connor in front of me.
Connor, you're not going to let this slide, are you?
Of course not.
Connor replied, his voice filled with renewed anger. As they both looked at me with expressions of fury, Nora declared,
We won't let Dad get away with this anymore. We'll show him hell and make him regret it.
Yo, I won't forgive him even if he begs.
I feel warm with joy. Despite the insensitivity of it all, I felt reassured by the solidarity of my siblings. It wasn't the time for me to cry and sob. I reminded myself that I needed to become stronger. Sensing Brian's presence as he exited the bathroom, I fled to my bedroom. I knew that if I were to face Brian, I would end up accusing him of his infidelity. Connor and Nora are planning revenge, and I can't mess this up.
Mom is feeling sick.
Oh, did she eat something weird?
I heard this exchange from downstairs. Later, Brian left for Washington again, without showing any concern for me. Then, the next month came around. On the eve of the day Emily referred to as their 10th anniversary in a message, my kids and I flew to Washington. We checked out of the hotel early the next morning and waited for Brian and Emily in front of Emily's apartment. After about an hour, Brian and Emily arrived from across the street. Seeing Brian's sloppy smile while holding hands with Emily filled me with intense disgust. Emily, wearing a high-end dress, looked surprisingly beautiful for a woman having an affair with a middle-aged man. Despite being young and having plenty of options, I couldn't help but wonder why she chose Brian. Their pairing, with an age gap like parent and child, was quite conspicuous, and Connor noticed it immediately, which didn't surprise me. Brian, with a beaming smile, froze when he saw us standing in front of the apartment entrance. His color drained from his face in an instant.
Oh, why?
He tried to come up with excuses while disentangling himself from Emily's grip, but he couldn't find the right words.
Who are these people, Brian? Do you know them?
Emily asked in a nasal tone, then seemed to realize.
Oh, maybe your wife and kids. Well, coming all the way to Washington is so over the top.
Brian, giving up on excuses, hoarsely asked.
How did you find out about this place?
During the school trip, I saw Dad and her entering a hotel. I followed you after you left and ended up here.
Connor explained with a grim expression.
So, we know everything. There's no point in making excuses now, Dad.
Yo, enough standing around. Let's go to Emily's room. I urged, and Brian and Emily immediately tensed up.
I bet Julia put them up to this. Letting their kids do something like this? She's such a lousy mother.
Why do we even have to let them in? Let's go, Brian.
I retorted sharply as Brian and Emily started to walk away again. A guy with no hint of fatherly qualities has the nerve to say that, Emily, we can make a big fuss here. The residents came out from the front door of the apartment. Emily said hello, so apparently, they are her neighbors. Emily shot me a glare of disdain before hurrying towards the apartment entrance. Without shutting us out, she allowed us to join them in the elevator. Good job. I nodded along with Connor and Nora, giving them a thumbs up in return. When we entered the apartment, Megs and bowls for two were lined up in the cupboard. There were even toothbrushes and razors that appeared to belong to Brian in the bathroom. Seated on the living room sofa, I spread out the investigation report handed to me by the private detective on the table. Brian, looking astonished, remarked,
You hired a detective?
"That's right. Thanks to that, I found out something interesting," I replied with a smile directed at Brian and Emily. "You two have been cheating for 10 years.
That's right.
And you have kids, too." There was a momentary pause, but Brian quickly confessed.
Yeah, that's correct.
"And are you paying child support?"
Of course, I have to take responsibility as a father.
I felt like throwing the teacup at Brian's smug face. "How dare you say that, even though you didn't parent Connor or Nora?"
But Emily, you don't want to get married, do you?
Brian asked with curiosity, and Emily looked up at him with a coy glance.
I'm happy just being with Brian. Titles don't matter to me. He knows that I'm the most important thing to him.
That's so adorable about Emily.
Brian said, ignoring my obvious disapproval, and pulled Emily closer, a smug grin on his face. But Emily's most precious person is not Brian, right?
Well, of course. My daughter is also important.
No, I mean this guy. You married him because you love him, right? Emily froze in response. That's because I had arranged several photos on the table. In one, Emily was handing a black briefcase to a man wearing glasses and a suit in front of an impressive house gate. There was also a photo of the man kneeling down and smiling at a young girl. From the composition, it was evident that these were candid shots.
Who's this guy?
Brian tilted his head in confusion, and I enlightened him. That's Emily's husband.
What?
Oh, you didn't know. Emily got married 5 years ago. Brian's mouth hung open in shock as he stared at Emily incredulously.
Wait a minute. You're kidding, right, Emily?
Brian was speechless as Emily awkwardly avoided eye contact. I glanced at the investigative documents about Emily and summarized them briefly. I see, her husband works for a famous multinational corporation. He used to be stationed in the UK, and now he's on an overseas assignment in Germany. That's impressive.
He's an elite. Cool.
Nora chimed in. She stayed in the US to enroll their daughter in a private kindergarten, or was that just an excuse? And she actually wanted to continue her relationship with Brian. You're lucky, Brian. Looks like you're being taken care of. Brian glared at me resentfully, his mouth opening and closing without forming any coherent words. It seemed like Emily being married came as quite a shock to him.
You have a nail salon at home. Wow, living the high life, huh?
No, it's not like that.
Emily retorted, visibly agitated.
Well, if you have the startup capital, you can open one at home, right?
Both Nora and Connor, sticking to the script, cornered Emily, trying to expose her flaws, Yeah, exactly. At first, neighborhood housewives and mom friends came, but since her skills are mediocre, she got bad reviews, so they're closed. What a pity.
How rude. Sales may be mediocre, but I still get occasional clients.
As Brian, sitting next to her, started to look more and more grim, Emily seemed oblivious.
Emily, is it true that you were married?
Emily, facing Brian, momentarily flinched at his stern tone, but quickly softened her demeanor and apologized in a submissive tone.
I'm sorry, Brian. I kept it from you until now. But my feelings for you are sincere.
But, Emily.
Hey, look, her daughter is so cute.
Shh, can you guys keep it down for a bit?
I, along with Connor and Nora, leaned in to look at her daughter's photo, letting out excited sounds. Hey, she really looks like someone. Emily's husband, right?
Yeah, totally.
She takes after her dad.
Brian's eyes widened. Snatching the photo we were looking at as if to confirm, he trembled as he gazed at it. And no wonder, the picture of Emily's husband and daughter standing side by side was like looking at identical twins.
My husband and Brian look so alike. So, it's no wonder our daughter takes after my husband.
As Emily started making this absurd excuse, the kids and I burst out laughing. Emily's husband was fair-skinned, slender, with a gentle demeanor. Brian, on the other hand, has a chiseled face, tan and muscular body. Finding common ground between the two was a challenge. Why don't you just admit it? She's not Brian's, she's your husband's. As I said this, stifling laughter, Brian muttered in a somber voice, still hunched over beside Emily.
I've been shelling out $800 a month in child support for someone else's kid.
$800, that's double the going rate. Brian, the show-off that he is, probably nodded with a smug expression, thinking he could fool me since he controls the household finances. With a solemn expression, Brian continued,
I pay the rent for this apartment. Then there's my daughter's ballet lessons, her clothing expenses, even bought her the latest gaming console. I was told she couldn't spend much time with me because she stays at her grandparents' house most of the time, and I just accepted it.
Brian's face was turning red all the way to his neck.
And all of that vanished into the stupid nail salon startup capital.
In a menacing tone, Emily flinched momentarily, but quickly retorted,
What's wrong with getting money from a rich guy? It takes money to make dreams come true, you know?
Rolling her eyes and ranting like that, she seemed like a completely different person from the one who was cozying up to Brian just a moment ago. Seeing Brian's surprised expression, she smirked and continued defiantly.
Yeah, that's right. I was bored while my husband was overseas, so I decided to hang out with Brian, whom I met at a bar. He brags about being an elite even though he earns less than my husband. I thought I'd fleece him for some cash.
Brian's expression shifted to one of despair.
My husband returned from the UK, but as soon as he found out I was pregnant, he left for Germany. When I casually mentioned to him that I might be pregnant with Brian's child, he was overjoyed. It's strange, considering he already have a daughter.
I couldn't help but share Emily's exasperated smile. Once the baby's born, he won't lift a finger to help.
Working overseas is so cool. Your husband looks really smart, doesn't he?
Nora's innocent voice made Emily beam with pride.
Well, yeah. But Brian's also making a good income, right? He's given me quite a bit of money.
The kids and I exchanged looks. When I glanced at Brian, he averted his eyes guiltily. Well, his salary is decent, though.
But my dad is struggling with his debt.
Emily's eyes widened.
Really?
Brian's been piling up debt just to support you, I explained calmly. His savings dried up long ago, and he's stuck in credit card debt hell. Right now, most of his salary goes towards paying off loans. Emily tilted her head.
So, how are you getting by now?
I'm managing with my salary. This time, it was Brian's turn to widen his eyes.
Aren't you just working a low-paying part-time job?
Forget already. I told you that once Nora started elementary school, I'd become a full-time employee. I retorted, frustration evident in my voice. Now I'm a branch manager, earning a salary similar to yours as a supervisor.
Brian, aren't you a department manager?
Do you really think this guy could handle being a department head at headquarters? As the children nodded in agreement, Brian's expression turned sourer, unable to refute the truth. Emily pressed her temples, her confusion apparent.
Well, then, your claim about owning land seems dubious too. Is your asset just the house you live in?
That house is in my name. It's an asset I inherited from my parents, unlike Brian, who doesn't even pay property tax. Emily seemed completely disillusioned by the continuous revelations.
So, you're not wealthy at all. Well, I don't need someone like you.
She glared coldly at Brian and snapped.
I will return him to his wife.
I don't need him either, and even if he tried to return now, the sin of ruining someone's family won't disappear.
Oh, whatever. Just pay the alimony, then.
She sighed, sounding bothered, and riffled her long hair with a melancholic air, showing no signs of remorse. Observing this, Connor tinkered with his phone for a moment before making a call.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Please, come in.
Soon enough, the doorbell rang. Emily, who answered the door, let out a scream-like voice.
Kent, what are you doing in America?
I heard everything from Connor. Mind if I come in?
She must have realized there was no point in arguing. Emily unlocked the auto lock and invited the man who had arrived in front of the room after a while. It seemed to be Kent, the man who was in the photo with Emily and her daughter, her husband. Brian, overwhelmed by Kent's quiet intimidation, trembled slightly. Kent threw a cool glance at Emily and Brian and calmly said,
I've been listening to your conversation through Connor's phone. Do you both have an explanation?
Oh, I didn't know Emily was married.
Brian spoke in a barely audible voice, and Kent nodded.
It seems so. Therefore, I won't be seeking compensation from you, Brian.
Brian breathed a sigh of relief. Next to him, Emily fell silent, looking dissatisfied.
I've suspected cheating for a while. The other day, before returning home, I found out about this apartment and Sir Connor loitering in front while wearing his school uniform.
Kent talked to me because he thought the student had lost his way. When I mentioned that my father's mistress lives here, and we got into detail, I was surprised to find out we had the same goal.
Kent took over the conversation.
He asked me to wait before taking action to get revenge on his father. He said he wanted to know about Emily. So Connor and I split the cost and hired a private investigator to look into her behavior.
So, Connor was able to make arrangements with the private investigator thanks to having Kent as an ally. Since hiring a private investigator is costly, it seems he didn't have enough money for the investigation with his pocket money.
I also wanted to know what happened while I was away from America. So, I pretended to return to Germany and stayed in America, keeping in touch with Connor.
Of course, Nora and I also heard about it from Connor. I thought it would be best to have him come out last and deliver the final blow to Emily. Sure enough, Emily turned pale and held her head in her hands.
Emily, let's get a divorce. I'll take custody of our daughter. If you love money that much, cozy up to some CEO and get remarried.
I'm already 30 years old, you know? It's not easy for me to remarry. Besides, without your salary, how do you expect me to live?
Emily clung to Kent, looking like she was on the verge of tears. Kent gently released Emily's hand and spoke frankly.
You should work hard and support yourself. Depending on a man for money won't lead to a stable life anyway.
Kent turned to me, Connor, and Nora, and apologized.
I apologize for the trouble my wife has caused.
You don't need to say that. It's okay. I replied, so. Since you three need to talk things out, we'll take our leave.
Yo, that's a good idea.
We got up from the table and headed towards the entrance. Then Brian, who followed us, apologized to me at the door.
Julia, I was wrong. Please forgive me and don't divorce me.
Why don't you want a divorce?
Nora asked curiously, and I explained. Because he wants me to take over his debts for him. Brian's cheeks stiffened momentarily. Seems like he hit the nail on the head.
You idiot. What do you think of Mom?
Nora scolded Brian in a fierce tone.
We don't need a father like him. I'm cutting ties.
I agree with Nora. I won't forgive you even if you apologize.
Connor added angrily. I'll send the divorce papers to you tomorrow. Fill out the form and submit it.
But, hey, wait.
Brian whimpered as the door closed in front of his face. According to what Connor heard, Kent indeed delivered the divorce papers to Emily as he promised. Of course, he also demanded alimony and won custody of their young daughter. Being kicked out of their splendid mansion, Emily sought refuge at her parents', only to face their fury. For the time being, Emily repaid Kent and me the lump sum alimony using money borrowed from her parents, and now she's working multiple part-time jobs day and night without rest to repay her parents. Additionally, Brian hesitated to submit the divorce papers to the authorities, even after I sent them to his apartment in Washington. He was serious about making me pay off his debt. I sent him a message asking him to file the divorce papers soon, and he responded with a furious response.
Please, reconsider the divorce. Don't you need me? You'll regret it if you leave me.
He was so persistent that I had to inform him through a lawyer that if he continued to drag his feet, I'd take him to court. Finally, he seemed to give up. Brian filed for divorce and transferred the alimony to my account. Although the reason for the divorce was kept secret at work, once a close colleague leaked it, it spread throughout the company like wildfire. Feeling uncomfortable, Brian quit his job and now supports himself with part-time work. He's been estranged from me and the children, toiling tirelessly every day just to repay his massive debts.
There's no joy in living.
He complains to his colleagues. Feeling lighter without Brian, I've been spending busy yet fulfilling days with Connor and Nora. This incident showed that Connor, who has a quiet personality, has a surprising ability to take action. Moreover, Nora, who has a sharp tongue, has shown her gentle, caring side towards her mother. From now on, I want to protect my precious children and live in harmony with them.